One. Welcome everyone to the Super Bowl upcoming edition of 41 is the mic. I am Derrick from Chiefs Digest alongside Nick Jacobs from KSHB 41 and Super Bowl enthusiast Nick Jacobs.
That's right. That's the only type of enthusiast I want to be, other than NFL draft.
But 4 times out of 5 years, the Kansas City Chiefs are heading back to the Super Bowl. Nick, can you believe it?
I mean, look, I just think the road that they've been on to get to the point this year, this is, to me, their most impressive one, other than the first one. And the reason I say that is just because navigating something like that that's so new and being able to handle the nerves of those moments that it took to get to that point, and then you take kind of what you have on paper with some of the roster and just kind of what they were putting on the field there up until, Christmas time. Like, you kind of wondered what would or wouldn't happen, or could they raise their level? And you don't want to count them out because the coaching staff and Andy Reid, but you needed to physically see it to be able to believe it. And they went through a gauntlet to get to the Super Bowl this time, to go through the Dolphins, the Bills, the Ravens, and have to play 3 consecutive games, 3 weeks in a row, 2 of them on the road. Like that's what makes it. Nobody will ever be able to say again, how will Patrick Mahomes perform on the road in not only a playoff game, but a conference championship? Can never say it again. It's been seen, done, and the people can move on with their lives on that one.
I mean, the only thing really left that he has to do would be if the Chiefs ever are a wild card team and has to go through 3 road games to get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That's the only thing left on the list.
Yeah.
But this, I mean, yeah, they take out the 6th seed, which the Dolphins were one of the best teams in the AFC all season, and then go through the 1 and the 2 seed to get to the Super Bowl. This is there's no doubt. I mean, this has been the most difficult road, and the most impressive thing to me, Nick, is that I think that these are the 3 most impressive games the Chiefs have played all season.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong about that one bit. So, I mean, ever since that Cincinnati game, started slowly putting it together and everything, and they've just continued to build on that. And boy, does Andy Reid look like a genius right now for giving everybody the week off of that Chargers game that needed it, especially Travis Kelce. The amount of rest, and that's what's cool thinking about it right now. Travis Kelce gave up a regular season streak, and because of that, he now has the postseason career streak of Jerry Rice's. So and that goes back to what you and I have talked about before on the podcast, to where Travis Kelce sacrificed the battle for the war, just like the Chiefs. And I think that's really the biggest thing about Andy Reid's coaching staff and the players that have been around, is they understand the end game and about how you win the war instead of just going battle by battle. And I think that's what's made the difference. I think it's another reason why they've had that season experience that's leading them to yet another Super Bowl.
Yeah, he made a calculated choice. He chose a run for a Super Bowl over keeping alive that streak. Mm-hmm. And it was a bet that paid off for Travis Kelce. This game, I mean, and we're talking about Travis Kelce. I don't think there's any doubt. This game, if we're going to start telling the story of this game, it is going to be that Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes absolutely owned the opening of this game, but perhaps the motivation that they had did not just start with the opening drive. These guys were already pretty pumped for this game, Nick, but then Justin Tucker, Ravens kicker, future Hall of Famer, just had to try and play some head games, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, they say kickers are people too, but today, Justin Tucker, he apparently thought he was Patrick Queen or Roquan Smith, who are much more physical presence guys, especially Roquan Smith, who have a mentality that fits the type of style that the Baltimore Ravens want to play, and a certain mentality they have. Justin Tucker thought he was just as tough, thought he'd get in the Chiefs' head the same way. And even though Lawrence Tynes put the tweet out, and that was, no, I'm sorry, that's garbage. I don't care if he played in the NFL or not. I'm just going to call it out that way. Like, I'm sorry, whether it's little league or high school or college or pro, teams take one half of the field once they start doing the true warm ups, and then the 50-yard line is kind of the in between where neither side tries to pass respectfully, whether you're home or away. And so, like, for him to specifically do that while Mahomes is passing and everything, and getting his warm up in and going out of his way to do that and to do his little lunges and his stretches and everything. I'm sorry, but like, I was hoping Justin Tucker would miss every single kick that he had. Extra point kick, I didn't care. I wanted him to miss it. I wanted him to miss the football off the tee when he was kicking off a couple times. Like, it was such a clown move. And like, I mean, it was the dumbest thing possible to do. I'm sorry, bro. You're a kicker. Okay. Know your role and move to the other side of the field. But instead, he didn't want to do that. He wanted to be big and bad. And it's kind of funny because the whole Ravens defense, they were so heck bent on proving how tough they were and how physical they were and trying to intimidate the defending Super Bowl champions that it led to so many penalties. And above all else, guess what? It led to your offseason. So congratulations on advancing to the Pro Bowl, because that's the only spot some of you guys are going. Good job on that one. Aces. And I loved afterwards Justin Tucker when he was doing lunges in the AFC Championship trophy presentation there. Thought that was fitting. No, I'm kidding. He didn't actually do that, but he might as well have, because that was about as smart as what he ended up doing being on the field at that time.
And the thing that baffled me about it, Nick, is that there's a time and schedule window
Yeah.
for kickers to go out and warm up before the game. And there's like two separate windows.
Right.
And you see it week in and week out. I mean, I try to get to the games, at a ridiculously early amount of time. So I always get to see the kickers warming up. But
right.
So, and it's a specific time. I mean, you'll look at it on the schedules and everything. I mean, there is a time for everything for when teams go out to warm up in the window. And yeah, I mean, each team has their own half, but the kickers go out and are usually warming up in a different period than the entire all squad is out there.
Right.
So the kickers and the punters come out. They will work up on one end of the field. Their counterparts will be working on that end too. Then they switch ends. They do their kicks. So they get to go both directions and test the wind and everything. Then the full squads come out. Then everybody goes back to the locker room. Then the kickers come out again with, in full uniform and everything at that point, and do more warm-ups pregame. Yeah. But, part of it is all about doing it so that you're not doing it when all the players are out there and you're going to hit guys with your kicks and there's not going to be people in your way. You're doing that. I have no idea what Justin Tucker was doing, because he was like trying to put his kickstand on the goal line towards was he trying to practice 10-yard kicks? I don't know what he was doing other than just trying to be a menace.
Yeah, and that's all he was doing. He was trying to put a chip on his shoulder and give himself some disrespect, give his team some disrespect. And when you have to do something like that means you're fearful deep down at the end of the day. That means you're trying to overcompensate because you're not up to par. So that's what that ended up being. That's a little psychological thing potentially. I could be terribly wrong, but I don't care either way, because they can go on to the Pro Bowl or their off season and have fun.
Well, the Chiefs had a very simple game plan for this game. And, we'll get to one part of it later, because the Chiefs started the game on defense and held the Ravens to a 3-and-out, which was huge to get the game started off that way. And we'll talk about the defense more in depth in a minute. But I mean, to me, I think the play that really kind of sent the message to me, if anything, was absolutely probably the first throw to Kelsey that Mahomes had, because that alone, I mean, it was just, I think, because it was a tough catch Kelsey had, but it was just, to me, a signal of things to come, because those two guys were in the heart of the confrontation with Justin Tucker, but two were also, I think, that the guys who, were most, vocal about the week and everything like that, about kind of being the underdog in this game and being focused for this one. And these two guys absolutely came out with the eye of the tiger today, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, that throw that Mahomes put on Kelsey's hip, against Hamilton. Like I'm telling you, man, like that. When I saw that one, I was like, oh, Ravens are in trouble because that's fearless Mahomes right there. That's laser focused gunslinging. This is my field. This is my championship, and nobody's gonna stand in my way because the laser pass he threw there, the precision he threw it to where Hamilton didn't have a prayer, and Kelsey was going to be able to get it and was going to be put in a safe spot where it wasn't going to be in harm's way in any way, shape, or form. Like that was the first message to me. Okay, things are real today, and Patrick's. You aren't going to question Patrick Mahomes' effort and his ability in this football game.
Yeah, that the touchdown pass to Kelsey was just an absolute. I mean, that ball, no one could touch that ball except Travis Kelsey. He was the only one that could possibly get his hands on it. And it reminded me a lot of the throw that Josh Allen made to Khalil Shakir last week, against L'Jarius Sneed. I mean, that was same kind of thing. I mean, there's nothing that a defensive back can do about a throw like that. If the receiver catches it, just tip your cap, because that was just an absolutely perfectly executed throw and catch. And yeah, when Kelsey got that touchdown, I mean, I texted a friend of mine and said, these guys aren't effing around today.
Right. No, you're not wrong. Like that. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I haven't seen a Mahomes throw at that level, that precision, like that kind of with that mentality that he had right there. I hadn't seen that in a while. And that was championship Mahomes right there.
And those two guys, Travis Kelsey and Mahomes, 11 of 11 on targets, 116 yards and a touchdown. It was not a career day for Travis Kelsey. He's had more receptions, he's had more yards, but this was vintage Travis Kelsey. I mean, this was probably the best game that he's had. I'd put it above the games that he had this year against, like the Denver Broncos and the Chargers. He had bigger numbers, but this to me was the best game of his season.
Yeah, it was definitely, for me, it was definitely in the top 2 or top 3. Just they really needed him because, I mean, for the most part, the Ravens were pretty determined on keeping Rice in check, and they were going to tackle anything underneath in the flats or any of the screens or anything like that. They were going to drop back at the sticks and just come downhill and have sure tackles and just kind of stop everything and really stop the momentum of the offense. Then towards the end of the second half, they decided, okay, we're going to start blitzing now and get them out of rhythm and make them uneasy. And then they started doing that, and the Chiefs really struggled to have an answer in the second half of the football game. And that's what kept it as close as it was. Because above all else, Kyle Hamilton was the star of the Ravens defense. Just how he flew around, how he went about his business. Like he was a star. Roquan Smith I expected him to have more of an impact than he did, just kind of from a physicality perspective. And Queen didn't have the impact that I thought he would. And let's be honest, there's really, other than Madubuike, I mean, there wasn't really much on the defensive line that really kind of impacted it. It was more of kind of a collective scheme, being able to execute at a level that was going to really stifle and frustrate the Chiefs offense.
Yeah, and we're talking about perfect play. I think I had to put Patrick Mahomes in that category too, because 30 of 39, 241, a touchdown, not gaudy numbers, but in a season in which I think, we'll probably talk about in the offseason. I mean, defense is caught up with offenses this year.
Yep.
And some of Patrick's best games this season have frankly just been games where he has been an outstanding game manager, and this was it. I mean, of those 9 incompletions, maybe a half dozen were throwaways when he just got rid of the football because there was nothing there. There were 3 plays where, he had a short throw to Justin Watson, one to Richie James. It was maybe 6 inches off target. One to Noah Gray that was a little off. But other than that, I mean, there was not a single throw that was in danger of being turned over. Everything was where it needed to be. This has been 3 straight games for me for Mahomes, and I think they even throw the Bengals game in there, you make it 4 in a row, where yes, he has absolutely just, I mean, I'm going to say game managed, because I mean, he's been doing it at an exceptional level. It's not like he's and I don't mean this is derogatory towards Alex Smith, but it's not like he's been Alex Smithing it out there. I mean, he has just been crushing it from a Patrick Mahomes. It's like Patrick Mahomes game manager. I mean, and that's not a bad thing. That's not an insult. That's because that's what he needs to do. That's what the Chiefs need when you got a defense like this.
I'm just letting you know, I'd watch that show on Netflix. Patrick Mahomes, game manager, Tuesdays at 8:00. No, yeah, I mean, like that's kind of the biggest tribute overall is just the fact that Mahomes isn't forcing it, and he's not putting the ball in harm's way. If there's and like I know fans are getting frustrated every time I put coaches film out there, and they'd be like, "Well, this guy's open and this guy's open." I'm like, "Yeah, but if that ricochets, that safety gets that." And no, that's not really open because a safety can that safety specifically can close on that, and that's not gonna that slant or that cross or that post isn't gonna be open either. So yeah, Mahomes. I feel like for the most part, Mahomes kind of accepted what the roster around him was, and so did the coaching staff, and they made the proper adjustments that like, hey, this is the path we need to go. Because I wasn't asking Matt Nagy kind of week after week about red zone and identity and things like that in the pressers. I wasn't asking that for the heck of it. It's because until you have those answers, and you were going to be wandering around in the woods without a map and a cell phone, not knowing where the heck you are. And they're finally out of the woods, and in the playoffs they finally got their way back to the road to Vegas, Matt.
Well, and maybe appropriately enough, because you talk about Vegas, the Raiders on Christmas Day was the absolute lowest point of the Chiefs season.
Yeah.
And Mahomes, I mean, let's face it, Mahomes was very inconsistent through most of the season. He had a fine year. It was not, MVP Patrick like we've been expecting from time to, year to year. Yeah. I mean, Lamar Jackson's going to probably win NFL MVP. He deserves it. Yeah. Was not the better quarterback today. But you look at the inconsistencies that Mahomes had throughout the year, and especially, he was kind of MB Patrick when throwing the ball in certain situations, behind the line of scrimmage, up to 10, up to 20 yards. Past 20 yards down the line of scrimmage, his numbers were absolutely terrible. They were well off his career numbers. Right. It's where I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I want to say that I believe his touchdown to interception ratio over 20 yards was 1-6. Yeah. Which, that's just not, I mean, typically he doesn't turn over the ball on deep throws, but then usually throws a lot of touchdowns. And yes, some of that stems back to what weapons that he has. But I mean, my only critique and criticism of Mahomes' play throughout the season was that he was trying to continue to do things that this offense wasn't equipped to do, and defenses weren't letting him do. And he kept trying to do it anyway. And Andy Reid let him. Andy Reid kind of let him figure out on his own what he can't get away with this season. And the Raiders game was probably the final straw. I mean, that was the one that I think probably caused Patrick to do the most, introspection, and certainly I think caused the most from a play calling standpoint, because the Chiefs' play calling has certainly, I think, been different since Christmas Day. Yeah. But think about this: Patrick Mahomes did not have 2 consecutive games this year in which he didn't turn over the ball. He's now had 4 straight games ending the season, 3 of them playoff games, in which he has not turned over the football. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, this has been his best football of the season. Has been the last 4 games. He's not making any mistakes. Yeah. That Christmas Day game, seems to really solidify a lot of thinking on this Chiefs offensive side.
And the other thing is, it doesn't always, whatever they did between that time, everything doesn't seem like a fire drill all the time anymore. It's not like, well, that's there, let's go take off and try to, backyard school, toss it around and everything. Like they're still keeping their structure, and like you said, Mahomes is tossing it away sometimes if it's not realistic, and he's not putting himself at risk with some of the runs that he would. He needs to when it's a must-have kind of, that's a certain point in the game where it needs to happen. But for the most part, he's just, I think he's really grown this year. And I think this year forced him to grow as a quarterback. And I'm telling you right now, with the growth he had to do this year, if they get that wide receiver room right in the offseason, and if they add some speed at running back, I'm telling you, man, like it's just impressive that last year people called it the rebuild year. This year, it looked like it was going to be a struggle, and people were assuming they were going to be one and done. Or at one point, if you think about it, there was some doubt that after the Raiders game they'd even make the playoffs. There was still a risk that they wouldn't make the playoffs, and here they are in the Super Bowl yet again. So I mean, I'm it's just fascinating the road that they took to get here and how many detours I had along the way, and how many times you and I in our mentions were getting fire Matt Nagy, fire Brett Veach, or this or that, that people were saying, but it didn't, it it's like I don't know. I'm just, and I know people want to give Mahomes the credit for everything, but man, what they've done is the past 3 weeks and what they've done over the years. That's I'm not saying Mahomes doesn't help tremendously, but that's more than one player. That takes a certain level of right chemistry in a roster, right competitiveness and depth, to where whenever Mike Edwards got hurt last week and Shamari Connor came in, he could do it. Whenever Willie Gay wasn't able to be in either game for the most part, whenever Charles Omenihu got hurt with his knee and everything, you take all those things combined, and they don't have terrible drop offs like that. That speaks to what the front office is doing overall in the roster. Now, there's still stuff that no matter what happens in the Super Bowl that they're going to need to continue to develop. Oh yeah, you got Jim Harbaugh coming to the Chargers. You already got Sean Payton, who's looking for his next quarterback. Antonio Pierce is going to have a physical football team there in Las Vegas. The Bills are going to be determined to right the wrong. The Ravens are really going to be determined to right the wrong, and they're going to be hungry for the Chiefs in just as intense a way, because they're going to be laser focused in the offseason about the Chiefs ended our season. They ended our Super Bowl season. They took what was ours. So that target is going to be bigger than a lot of other targets for the most part. So yeah, the Chiefs are going to have to evolve in a couple of months. But boy, man, they at the core and the compass of everything, when you take in ingredients, I think for the most part, they collectively, the roster, do a good job not listening to the outside noise, knowing that Andy Reid is going to get them to the path that they need to succeed. And if you ever have any doubt ever again, you just point back to this season. Whether the Chiefs do or don't win the Super Bowl is irrelevant, because the road they took to get there, that's what I'm always going to marvel about for this specific Super Bowl, no matter what the result is. The fact that they potentially, in a lot of eyes, probably overachieved, and now the national media is going to talk about them for 2 weeks. That's going to be funny in itself. But I don't know. I think I'm more, since we've had so many conference championships and we've had so many Super Bowls, I'm just more in awe of the level that it was at other times, and they got to this point where in 2019 the defense had to find their way, and now this year the offense had to find its way. I don't know. It's just been an interesting ride to this point.
I am going to take one segue into some of the post-game comments, because you talk about the front office. And I thought that Brett Veach, took maybe deserves to take a victory lap for putting together a Super Bowl roster when, like you said, there have been plenty of people on social media who have said, oh, fire Brett Veach. He was terrible. And look what he did with this receiver room. Well, it is a Super Bowl receiving room. So, leave it at that. But he also went pretty detailed, for the more so than at any point he has done so far this season, in saying, one, I tried to get a first-round receiver, couldn't get it to work. Nobody would trade with him, so they couldn't get the first-round receiver that they wanted. Take Rashee Rice, which obviously has been a great move. In case guys didn't, in case people didn't notice, for everybody who does love Zay Flowers, Rashee Rice had a better year than Zay Flowers did. And Zay Flowers, of course, also kind of pulled a McCole Hardman, but I digress.
I want to say this, and then I'll get back to it. I'm sorry, but I am always going to dream of having Zay Flowers and Rice together.
Oh, sure. No, that would be if the Chiefs had been able to pull that off, I mean, that would have been the dream. And Zay Flowers would not have fumbled if he was, with the Chiefs. But And then acknowledging that, hey, you know what, free agency market wasn't really there, and didn't really mention the part about Chris Jones not really letting them invest in free agency. But
Yeah.
Brett pretty much laid out after the game about, hey, we did what we could with the receiver room. We tried to do more, and hey, but you know what? Doesn't matter because Patty Mahomes makes it work. That
Yeah.
was the message from Brett Veach. And it was a
Yeah.
little bit of a, hey, you know what? I know you guys don't think that I care about the receiver room, but guess what? My receiver room just went to a Super Bowl, so there.
Yeah. Look, I mean, at the end of the day, like, and that's here's I'm gonna go off target here for a minute. And I'm sorry, this wasn't something we talked about in the prep either, but it just sparked in my head from you saying that. That's what I find so ridiculous about the Bill Belichick talk that keeps happening right now.
Oh,
About how Andy Reid is allegedly going to retire and the Chiefs are going to bring in Bill Belichick. First off, if Bill Belichick comes here, he's going to want ultimate power. The Chiefs have already been through Scott Pioli before. Don't need to go back to that way, and it don't need to go back to that way.
no.
And you've got plenty of quality coaches on staff who would deserve promotions if somebody moved to head coach and then somebody moved into a role. I don't know, maybe on the defensive side, you've got 3 quality coaches on that defensive side that if I'm in the Chiefs' shoes, I do not want to lose from the organization in any way, shape, or form because they're a big part of why this Super Bowl run is happening for the Chiefs. So, yeah, when I hear that, I'm like, okay, so let's put puzzle pieces together. Is Bill Belichick still going to let Brett Veach have say over the roster? Is he still going to let him, be the one who picks the players and everything? Or here's a crazy idea: the guy who helped architect, and people will still debate this, and I don't really care anymore because there's only a handful of Dorsey players left on the roster. Yes, they're good players, but it takes more than just a couple good players to win a Super Bowl or to get to. You don't get to 6 consecutive AFC championships. You don't get to 4 Super Bowls in 5 or 6 years, whatever the heck it is at this point. You don't do all that unless you build an overall good collective and complementary roster. Like, yes, I understand that Brett Veach was involved in Chris Jones, and I get Brett Veach was involved or John Dorsey was involved in Chris Jones, and that he was involved in, that he was technically the guy selecting or handing or calling in the card, whatever the heck you want to call it, with Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. But Brett Veach was the one scouting Patrick Mahomes, and he was the one getting in everybody's ear during. And people can say the stories after the fact. No, if you were plugged in the ground, like you knew that. They were pretty into Patrick Mahomes, and like Brett Veach was a huge part of why that was happening well before it ever became public. And Therese did a phenomenal job getting some of those backstories out there that have been years in the making. But I'm sorry, I went on a little bit of a rant there. But if I'm Andy Reid, why would I retire right now? Why would you retire right now? All your coaches are in a great spot. Everybody's got phenomenal job security above all else, and you're going to give it to somebody outside like a Bill Belichick that's going to tear everything apart that you did. Get the heck out of here. Let's stop right now. Whoever is being bribed right now to put that story out there, let's squash that. Let's I don't know. It just bugged me hearing it multiple times lastly.
I mean, if you want to do anything for the heart rate of both Nick and myself, do me a favor, Chiefs fans, and I won't say the names. You know who it is, but if you see anyone reporting and talk, I'm not going to say reporting. If you see anyone speculating about Bill Belichick coming to Kansas City, I want you to either block or mute them on social media so that you never see their nonsense again, because all they're doing is they're trying to get you to click on. Because that's how they get paid. They get paid by making up nonsense and saying things that are just hyperbolic craziness, such as, I'm never going to watch the NFL again if Tyreek Hill ever plays another down in the NFL. Because, yeah, I'm talking about the same person. But...
And yet they're still covering the NFL.
Yet still covering the NFL.
Still getting a check from it.
These are heartbreak because then people won't talk about this nonsense, and Nick and I will feel so much better. So that's your gift to us if you enjoy the podcast.
Sorry, I detoured off. Let's get back.
We both did.
My apologies.
We both did, but we needed to. We need to get that off our chest. We are going to get to the defense because the defense is another big part of this because the Chiefs' plan to win this game was get a lead, turn it over to the defense. But they could have had a bigger lead had it
Mhm.
not been for a very questionable call on the drive that ended up, late in the first half that ended up, being the Harrison Butker 52-yard field goal. Could have been a 21-7 lead if the officials had recognized that Trey Smith was blocking on a screen pass.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean that's all, and that's a technique. Like I mean, Mr. Schwartz said it perfectly. I mean, that's a normal technique you see on coaches' film every week for offensive linemen. You're trying to propel them at a certain time in a certain way to keep them away from the quarterback, but also take their momentum and get them going forward. And I know people will argue and debate about, oh, well, he had it a certain way and everything. But I'm telling you, like that, you see that week after week in the NFL. So like that kind of that kind of that call of holding on Trey Smith, that's what kept that game close until the bitter end. And from a ratings perspective, it made for a better, more entertaining football game for just football fans in general. But in terms of like putting a game away, like that potentially puts that game away in a very ugly fashion before halftime. So like I mean, so like that would have been big if they didn't throw that flag that I didn't think was necessary there. Are there some penalties back and forth on either side that you're kind of like, well, they got away with this one. Well, they got away with this one over here. Yeah, no, I mean, but that's that it was on both sides of the football. It wasn't just one or the other. Because there were some plays with the Ravens, I thought they were going to get something there, and they didn't. But then there were some times with the Chiefs, I thought they were going to get some. Another officiating crews would have thrown it, and they didn't. The refs let them play more than people give them credit for today.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly there were more than a few moments that the Ravens fans thought that they should have had some penalties in the secondary, and you're right, they let them play. I know you and I, this was the first time, folks, that I ever got to watch a game in the presence of Nick Jacobs. And I'm just saying that if KSHB wants to, have like a prize contest where you get to watch a game with Nick Jacobs, you should all enter that because watching a game in Nick's presence, we weren't even like next to each other. We were just in the same room. And so I
Well,
got to,
people need to know it's a massive newsroom.
yeah.
Matt's at a conference table with our sports director Mike Schaefer and Mackenzie Nelson back there watching the game because I'm having to look in the system on the program and help on some of that stuff, and then I'm pulling in video at the same time while I got 4 TVs up and I'm keeping tabs on the Chiefs game and I didn't tell you this part, Matt, but I've got 2 TVs live. I've got one on cable box, which gives me a 4-second delay so I can see if I need to again. At least I'm over, and then I have the computer in front of me to, if I want to go back and look at each play, I can do that. So for me, that's kind of like heaven during a game in real
I figured
time.
you probably had figure skating going on too.
Well, you know what, Matt? That might have been on TV number 4. I just forgot to change it.
But I mean, that was an experience, and I treasure that. If I get to watch another Chiefs game in the presence of Nick, that will be a honor. It was great.
Now people are going to want to know what about it that was fun, or entertaining, or whatever you felt, or concerning, and that I need help.
No, you definitely don't need help because I mean it was a cathartic experience because you're a Chiefs fan, so you get excited during games and you see things that a lot of people don't see. So, just every once in a while hearing, words coming out of your mouth and everything. It's like holding.
There was a safety at that one that I was very frustrated about.
Oh, there was you were very excited on that one.
It was a leg whip too.
Yeah, the
So, I
leg
mean, there
whip
was a hold and a leg whip. The leg whip was worse. I can't remember if that one should have been a safety because of the leg whip, since a penalty occurred in the end zone. I know with holding it definitely wouldn't have been, but I wasn't definitively sure either way.
Yes, that's a safety was definitely called out very loudly through the newsroom. That was
Yeah, I hope my news director didn't hear it.
that was very clean though. So, that was a very family oriented call. So
I try my best with that.
But and I don't even remember where I was going. I just remember now that I was just talking about what a wonderful experience it was watching a game in your presence. And
and
then we
how
were talking
there
about
needs to be a contest.
the officiating
Yeah.
and just hey, it kind of went both ways. I mean, I don't think it was really imbalanced one way or the other. Were there blown calls and missed calls? Maybe, yeah, but they were letting them play, and that probably did help the Chiefs secondary. I mean, there was definitely some moments. I know there was some debate about whether that should have been maybe holding on the Deion Bush interception. I'm glad that they did not call holding on a ball that was that badly underthrown that the receiver had no chance of coming back for because he was in triple coverage.
Yeah.
But that's probably my final point on the offense. It's a good point to transition to the defense because whereas the Chiefs' offense was very in control, even when it was struggling in the second half, they weren't making mistakes. The Ravens' defense was just playing spectacularly. The Chiefs were doing well. Oh, I know. And one thing I wanted to put a bow on was that the holding call against Trey Smith that was not holding negated one of the best designed and executed screens in the history of mankind. And the holding call had no impact on the play.
Right.
That did not impact the touchdown whatsoever. That was just an absolutely beautiful screen, beautiful run by Rashee Rice. The fact that it doesn't count just breaks my heart for the kid. But that was the difference between these two offenses is that the Chiefs offense played within control, very few mistakes, 3 penalties, no turnovers. You can't say the same thing about the Ravens. The Ravens offense had a lot of mistakes, 3 turnovers, 8 penalties on the day. But the reason, Nick, is because Steve Spagnuolo's defense just absolutely drove them batty.
Yeah, I mean, there's three things with the Chiefs defense that opponents either don't want to attack or just are arrogant enough to refuse to attack. So for the Chiefs, it's threefold. The first one is you match up a running back with the Chiefs linebacker. That's not Drew Tranquil. You do that, you have a chance to kind of win for the most part, especially whenever they're going up against Nick Bolton. So like there's a chance to win that. And, hypothetically, maybe sometime you're still in the lineup, Zay Flowers, who Nick Bolton has to cover, even though he did as good as he could with his athletic ability against him.
He covered him for 7 seconds, Nick.
Yeah. So
the play just lasted 7.5. So that was a problem.
Yeah. So you have that portion of isolating a linebacker with a running back. Then the second part of it is the Chiefs at times do struggle against the run. When you physically run right at them and some power plays and everything, the Chiefs do wear down on the defensive line and a linebacker, and they do struggle at times against the run. And then finally, the other piece of the puzzle is, let's see. So you got the run, you got that. Tackling in open space. Like the Chiefs can get a little sloppy tackling in open space, and the Ravens took full advantage of that. But it just amazed me how much the Ravens abandoned their power run game and did not lean on it the same way that they did against the Houston Texans, because the Chiefs were at minimum doubling them on defensive snaps to their offensive snaps. But then it seemed like everything flipped today, especially in that first half, to where how long that Ravens defense was on the field and how the Chiefs wore them down. And just it was like the exact opposite of it to kind of even the playing field for the most part. So I don't know. It was actually kind of impressive. Their strategy was really, really impressive.
It really was. I mean, you can say on simple terms that it was just, a matter of, to a degree, the typical Steve Spagnuolo approach against Lamar Jackson is that you don't let him beat you with his legs. You keep him contained. You ensure that he doesn't break out and scramble for 100 yards on you or have designed runs that are going to, I mean, the Ravens were, to me, pretty worried about even just letting Lamar run and designed runs. I mean, They did pick up a first down in a short yardage situation where, they went to him. But the fact that the Ravens fall into the trap, it seems like every single time against the Chiefs, is that as soon as they fall behind, they stop running the football and they do exactly what the Chiefs want them to do, which is to put the ball into the arm of Lamar Jackson. And that's what, once again, they did. And the Chiefs, with a lead, just went after Lamar, went after him with the pressure, went after him with their I don't know if they were really. I mean, I know L'Jarius Sneed said they only played two coverages, but then again, I mean, the Chiefs' coverages are pretty complex,
Right.
and they do a lot of dividing the field into half. So you're going to have maybe you may have man on one half and zone on the other, and they did plenty of that to confuse Lamar Jackson. But I mean, it was a simple plan. It was contain Lamar so he can't, go for 100 yards on the ground against you and just challenge him to beat you with his arm. And he could not do it today.
Yeah. And above else, the streak still continued to where the Chiefs still have not given up more than 24 in the playoffs. That's fascinating to me that they held those three caliber of opponents in the Dolphins, Bills, and Ravens to those numbers with what each team had weapon wise on offense. Like that speaks volumes about what Steve Spagnuolo's done, what Joe Cullen's done, what Dave Merritt's done. Like those guys are they're phenomenal coaches, they're phenomenal coordinators, and like they brought it this entire postseason run. And I'm thankful that they're here in Kansas City, and I hope they stay in Kansas City for quite some time. So whatever you got to pay him to keep him here, you go ahead and do that. But yeah, I mean they had Lamar rattled, and like Look, Lamar's not the most accurate quarterback outside the numbers to begin with, and he's not. He needs a certain rhythm and certain confidence, and if you're not using the run game to help balance it, like he gets out of whack pretty quickly. And once he sees some blitzes and takes some hits, he gets a little bit more rattled. And like the Ravens, it just fascinated me. The Ravens, I thought they did such a poor job play calling wise to try to get him back into rhythm at times. Because the most confident he was after that 4th and 1, and then he ran off on the tear. And I can't remember if they scored with Flowers on that drive or it was another drive, but like that, there's a certain things you got to do with a quarterback that hasn't been there and done that in terms of winning the AFC Conference Championship, going to Super Bowl, and hasn't been on those stages. Like you've got to handle him a certain way, and I feel like Todd Monken didn't do a good job of that. And just really abandon who the Ravens are, what their identity is. Because I know when you have Zay Flowers and you got Odell Beckham, and then obviously you have Bateman and you got Nelson Aguilar, and you have that skill set wise at receiver, and then you have Likely and returning Mark Andrews. Like you should be able to do a lot more than what they did today, whether Steve Spagnuolo's the DC or not. But there's just I don't know. There was a lot that Lamar seemed very overwhelmed, and he really, unfortunately, he wilted under pressure, and that's going to eat him alive all off season. That's going to bug him. It will drive him, but that's going to bug him. And then I feel awful for Zay Flowers. I know it's football and everything, but man, that's a play that's going to haunt you for a while, fumbling right before the end zone. And he's going to tell himself all off season if he'd protected that ball or done this differently or done that differently, that they're tied and then maybe they're going to the Super Bowl, and just to have to deal with that all off season. And probably even some of the people on social media, they're going to say whatever they're going to say to you that's not even accurate. Like that's another thing that I do feel bad for him. And they look collectively the Ravens defense, that's a different thing. I can separate those, but I do feel bad for Zay Flowers and just the stigma that Lamar Jackson is going to have this offseason until he gets back to the postseason next year, hopefully for him and the Ravens. Like that's going to be a little bit of a tough road, but they'll have an opportunity to have a chip on their shoulder either way.
Yeah, the Chiefs have created rough off seasons now for two franchises because the Bills are going to have the exact same conversation. Their conversation is you can't beat the Chiefs in the postseason, so what are you going to do to fix that?
Right.
Ravens are now, you can't win the big one. Chiefs got you now. Well, I mean, how do you get over the hump? Can Lamar ever do it? And and I mean, and Zay was the exact same situation that McCole Hardman found himself in last week. I mean, yeah, you know what? If he just goes down, believe the Ravens have first and goal at the 1.
Yeah.
I mean, they're punching it in. Two things that really stood out to me in this
Yeah.
game number wise. One baffles me, and that was Gus Edwards, 3 carries, 20 yards.
Mm.
Why? And like you said, I mean, the Chiefs are susceptible on the ground defensively at times. What in the world did Monken do? Just abandoning the ground game.
Yeah. I still, I mean, I'll have no answer because there's nothing the Chiefs were doing scheme wise. It just got to a point where part of me kind of wonders if the coaching staff was calling so hard, or among us calling so hard, but like they were rooting so hard to kind of let Lamar have this moment and get the stigma off his back that people were putting on him about how he can't do this, can't be a passer, can't do this or can't do that. And part of it also may have been with Mungan, may have been part ego too, where he's trying to prove, hey, I'm the guy that's smart enough to help Lamar get past that hump and win an AFC Championship and get us to the Super Bowl. So at the end of the day, I think it could. I mean, it feels kind of like from a distance, part ego and just part stubbornness and kind of just really trying to prove a point. When at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're trying to prove. Don't worry about proving a point. You're trying to win. You're trying to win a championship. So what helps you win a championship? That's what you need to go do. Don't worry about what the style points look like. It's in the Olympics, okay? Not trying to get style points on this. Just go out there, do what has to be done so you can hoist that Lamar Hunt trophy, and then you can try to hoist that Lombardi trophy. Again, goes back to what I said earlier, man. There's some people that want to win the public opinion or the war or the battle, but there's some people that are genuinely about trying to win the war, and the Chiefs are one of those organizations, and they have that culture with Andy Reid.
My other favorite statistic from this game, it was, do you remember who after you listed off all these targets, all these guys that Lamar Jackson has around him, do you remember who was the second leading receiver for the Ravens at halftime?
Oh, at halftime?
Yeah.
Because Flowers had a couple catches, but he didn't have a ton.
He had the 39. He had one. He had the 39-yard touchdown.
Okay,
in the
so
first
probably
half.
blending in third and fourth.
Where it was a broken play that Leo Chanel had a sack that then after Lamar was able to dance around for 7.57 seconds before throwing the football.
Mm-hmm.
The second leading receiver for the Ravens in the first half.
Sadly, I know I'm going to be wrong on this one, but I'm just going to say it anyways. Lamar passing himself, probably.
Lamar Jackson was the second leading receiver for the Ravens in the first half with 13 yards. That's how dominant the Chiefs defense was. That their two leading receivers in the first half for most of because Lamar only had 67 yards, I believe, in the first half. And 47 of them were either the broken play with Zay Flowers in the end zone for the touchdown, and 52 of the 67, that was 39, and then 13 with Lamar off the batted pass.
Yeah.
That was the majority of their offense in the first half. Absolutely dominating performance from the Chiefs defense.
And when this is crazy to me because I know it sounds bad of me to say, but man, you take those weapons on the Ravens and you put them on the Chiefs, like Andy Reid's hanging 50 every week type of thing.
You don't even need to take them all. Take Zay Flowers, likely.
Yeah.
Maybe another receiver. Heck, who you want. If you need Beckham, okay, sure.
That's
honestly even just maybe Aguilar or Rashad Bateman. Put one of them along there with Zay Flowers. Yeah.
That's such a misuse of that talent. And again, that's not us saying that Steve Spagnuolo didn't do an amazing job. It's just like, gosh, man, there's just certain level of coaching that's in this league. And the Chiefs have the benefit to where they have a mind like Andy Reid on that side of the ball, and they have Steve Spagnuolo's mind on the other side of the ball, and they have some good position coaches on each side along the way. Like that, It's just that's why the Chiefs have had the success in this 6-year window that they have. So it just fascinating, man.
Do you have? I mean, I think that obviously the L'Jarius Sneed's knocking the ball out of Zay Flowers'
Yeah,
hands is going to be the lasting image from this game defensively. Did you
yeah.
have? Do you have anybody else on the defensive side that either had a big play or a big game that really stands out to you?
When I go back and rewatch later without having occasional interruptions in it, I think I think I'll find a couple. I mean, a Mini Hughes strip sack earlier in the game was a big one. The Dion Bush one, look, he caught the pass and everything, and I'm not knocking him on that, but Lamar was panicking and throwing into triple coverage. So hopefully somebody was going to catch it among the three.
He made the play that was given to him.
Right, right. So, and I'm not knocking him on that. Man, I'm trying to think if there's one more that stood out. Oh, Tershawn Wharton on Lamar.
Yes, yes.
That one where he took the angle and like the Chiefs defensive line is just worn down at that point, and they're on fumes, or there may not even be fumes left in the vehicle. They're just going on pure will at that point. And like the angle he took to keep Lamar from being able to get that first, and how he predicted it correctly and was able to kind of make a stop there. That was one that really kind of, now that I think about it, that one kind of really stuck out to me. Where like, man, that's a really underrated play that's not going to get the love that it properly deserves until the coaches film on Monday night or Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm with you. The Tershawn Wharton play really stood out to me, but I think what just struck me, at least
Yep.
in watching it live, was that if you wanted to pick out a big key moment or a big key player from the Chiefs defense, I think you almost could have picked like 9 different guys
Yeah.
because, Omenihu, that sack was huge. George Karlaftis had a big sack and the fumble recovery off the Omenihu sack. Trent McDuffie gets the fumble recovery off of the L'Jarius Sneed force against Zay Flowers. Justin Reed had a huge sack on a third
Yeah,
down.
that one against the back. That was
It just seemed like countless guy after guy was making plays. It wasn't just one. Drew Tranquil has 8 tackles, leads the way. I mean, it just seemed that they were coming in waves as far as
yeah.
just everybody had a good day. I mean, I can't really say that anybody was poor, or and even special teams. Joshua Williams had a great open field tackle on Duvernay that just absolutely stopped him. They did get victimized on one nice little return, but it didn't really come back to haunt them.
Yeah.
But this defense just really, to me, had an overall amazing performance against this team.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree with it. When you start kind of going back on individual plays and adding them all up, and just how many times the Ravens didn't even get past their own 50, and just how it seemed like there was just this wall or barrier for most of the game that they couldn't even get to that point. So, and then Bolton, man, dropped that one interception. That one could have been another one where the Chiefs could have tacked on some points, but
He did drop that like a man who has a broken wrist. So
yeah, I know. You said that in the moment. You're like, well, he does. And it wouldn't have said to somebody else. And you're like, well, he does have a broken hand.
he does have a broken wrist. So we'll cut him a little slack there.
Touche there, sir.
Little slack. But one guy who did not have a drop that really finished the whole game off with an exclamation point, Nick. Game gets salted away at the end with the circus of circus catches by Marquez Valdes-Scantling.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, you're gonna have to give him credit for what he did in Buffalo last week, and then also again for that moment, to have that moment, season on the line, Super Bowl on the line. You catch this, you're going to the Super Bowl. You're going to be in Vegas. You have a chance to win another ring, another potential parade, another Lombardi, all that combined. And that moment right there, he was able to come down with that football. Now, was it the most beautiful way or the most perfect catch or the most perfect technique or anything like that? No, but to be able to do that and come up with that moment, like, you have to recognize and give him credit on that one. And I'm personally not going to hate on him for that one, because like that, with the struggles he's had this year and how frustrating it's been overall, to still take advantage of that moment, ignore everything in the past, not let it get in your head, and to be able to come up with such a clutch, crucial catch in a high pressure situation on the road. Like, I mean, that's a big moment for him in his career.
Yeah, for a guy who has had a tough year. I mean,
Yeah.
even though I know that Marquez has tried to smile through it and project confidence through it, you know, in his heart of hearts, he hurts that he's had such a tough year.
Mhm.
And I said this. I'll quote myself. I said this earlier today on a radio interview. I sometimes feel like Chiefs fans are mad at Marquez for not going around kicking puppies because of just how bad a year he's had. But, you know, he has tried his best to have a positive view through the whole thing. His teammates still have his back. I mean, how many times have we heard it? I mean, I think Travis
Yep.
Kelce said it a half dozen times is, hey, you know what? We got this guy's back because we know at a big moment he's going to make a play for us. And back-to-back games, he's done that for the Chiefs. He made 3 big plays the last 2 weeks. And you know, I mean, you almost have to be happy for a guy like that that has struggled through so much and certainly has endured a tough year. To have a moment like that, I mean, that's kind of what this game's all about, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, he had perseverance and he battled through it to get to that end of the rainbow where the pot of gold is, or a Lombardi in this case. So, look, I mean, props to him. Like, I'm not going to knock him on it. That's for sure.
Well, after the Chiefs put this one away, I was all set to, you know, start the Chiefs and Lions week 1 repeat narratives because it certainly looked like that was going to be who the Chiefs were facing in 2 weeks.
I was excited for it. I really was.
That would have been a great matchup, but the poor Detroit Lions could not hold on to the 24-7 lead. And instead of a week 1 rematch, we get a Super Bowl 54 rematch.
Yeah, I mean, Dan Campbell made a lot of poor decisions in high pressure situations that cost his team a Super Bowl, run. And so that's something he's gonna have to live with, and that's what a lot of the players are gonna have to be frustrated with for the most part. Like, there was some decisions in terms of potentially kicking field goals, a third down run there near the end where he forced himself to call a timeout that really kind of ended the game unofficially. So there was just a lot there, a lot of blunders to where the Lions haven't been in those high stakes situations, and the Chiefs have, and some other team, the 49ers technically have, and on both sides of the ball, both positive and negative over the years. So yeah, it's a good learning experience if the Lions can get back, but if they can't get back, then boy, that is a frustrating, haunting thing, like the 1993 Chiefs Bills conference championship game.
Yeah, I mean, you almost feel like that the Lions could be back because they've got a very good young nucleus. And I mean, as being someone who will admit, hey, I was wrong because I was in that group that saw, Dan Campbell's introductory press conference and thought, this guy doesn't get it. This guy's a corny, he's my linebackers coach. I love him. He's probably a great defensive coordinator, but as a head coach, this guy's over his head. And I had smart people telling me, no, don't buy into the press conference. They're like, he's a better coach than that. This guy's the real deal. And he's proven that. So hopefully they will be back. But we also know that, hey, Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers are not to be trifled with.
Yeah, and and I know I'm looking so far ahead right now, but boy, the Chiefs got the Ravens on their schedule again next year. They're gonna have Jim Harbaugh's Chargers. They're gonna have the Bills. So,
They get
and
to
then
face a Harbaugh
they're
at
gonna have
least
the
3 times next year.
and then yeah, exactly. And then they got the 49ers on their schedule next year. So basically, their whole playoff run this year, minus the Dolphins, they're gonna get to play in the regular season in 2024. But it's so far ahead. I apologize, but yeah, no, I mean, hey. George Kittle vowed he was going to get back there someday after they lost to the Chiefs in that Super Bowl, and here's their moment. They did. They got back. So get ready for an interesting week of Brock Purdy versus Patrick Mahomes. Well, 2 weeks, actually, of Brock Purdy versus Patrick Mahomes. And I will say, I am thankful the Chiefs are going to get 2 weeks to kind of rest and recover to a certain extent. And when I say rest, I don't mean that they don't practice. I'm just saying not that that Ravens game was such a physical football game that
Yes.
their body's going to need 2 weeks to recover to get back to hopefully optimal performance. Because if they were having to play a game this upcoming Sunday, boy, I would be worried. I'd be worried about an injury report because just this week, I think the Chiefs had 17 players on the injury report against the Bills, and that was a physical game, but it wasn't the physicality at the level that the Ravens were. That was a whole nother level of physicality. But I think that's one of the toughest things the Chiefs have gone through, both offense and defense this year. And yeah, that was every bit of a battle and dogfight that I thought it was going to be when we were having the podcast last week, and then when we did the Q&A on Tuesday.
Yeah, and and you're right. I mean, rest this week is a big deal in the sense that they're not playing a game on Sunday, and that's where the real benefit comes in. Because for Andy Reid, this is not really a rest week. I mean, they will have at least 2 days that are going to be considered practices, but they're going to have walkthroughs, and it's going to be probably a higher intensity prep week this week because Andy Reid wants that game plan for the Super Bowl in place before they get on the plane next Sunday. Because the one thing that he knows as a head coach is that next week in Las Vegas is a circus. It is nonsense. It starts with opening night on Monday and just gets even more ludicrous from there. You really don't have time to get much accomplished football wise because the players are doing so many interviews and they've got media sessions and they've got network commitments and sponsor deals and all this nonsense and everything that I mean your football time next week is limited. This is the week that you get the game plan in place and you get your players ready for the 49ers.
Yep. Yeah, it's but the Chiefs know that routine. They know that.
They got it down to a T.
I was going to say, this is going to be year 4 out of the past 5 that they're going to know what to expect and what's going to happen. And they're probably so used to the halftime show now and how long that in between is going to be from an adjustment perspective and all that combined. It's I'm interested to see here in a couple of weeks what it's going to be like and how the two are going to match up. But I mean, I'm not going to pretend I wouldn't have loved the Chiefs' chances against the Lions, but I still really like their chances against the Niners because with what they've gone through the past 3 weeks, that gives you a lot of confidence, especially against the Ravens today. Because man, that's one of the most physical. Like I said before, that's one of the most physical defenses I've seen the Chiefs have to play in probably 4 or 5 years.
I only have one potentially minor complaint.
Okay.
And that is going to be that, because it is an even year, they alternate each year. AFC is the home team for Super Bowl 58, which means that the Chiefs get first choice of practice venue, of hotels, of meeting schedules. Last year, Eagles got the first choice of everything. And one thing to Andy Reid's benefit was that the Eagles chose the afternoon media requirements and the morning practice, which is not the one that Andy Reid wants. Andy Reid wants the players to have the morning media commitments, and then their practice is basically the same time that their practice is in Kansas City. So I know what he's going to choose this year, which means that for those of us media, lazy types going out, that the Chiefs media, I'm sure, will be at 8:00 in the morning in Las Vegas, which that is too early for me, Nick. So that's my only complaint, is that I have to be at work at 8:00 in the morning.
Well, man, if it makes you feel any better, there's only a couple of years in your life you've had to deal with this problem. At least it's not an every week or an every year thing.
It's not. It's not. It's starting to feel that way, Nick.
There's just a restaurant I hope you go to while you're there, and we will talk about that another time on where I hope you test out.
I will need all the recommendations you got, Nick. So, and everybody out there in podcast land. So lay me on.
This is one that Frank Sinatra frequented a lot from what I've read about. And a lot of other big celebrities, including I think Elvis Presley and some others. It's a pretty big staple there since the 50s in Vegas.
Oh,
It's
okay.
actually literally a reason I would actually it's single-handedly one of the reasons I would go to Las Vegas just to have that dining experience at that place.
I have not been to Vegas in a long time, so I know it's going to have changed a lot since I've been there, but I'm looking forward to it.
I'm just saying, a goal of mine in life is to go to Las Vegas at some point, just to see it and experience it. But I want to be able to do it without having to have any work commitments. I can tell you that right now, because I want to
Yeah,
live in the moment and enjoy the heck out of it.
the work commitment is the thing that gets in the way of it all, Nick.
Well, and you know what my work commitment would be. You got to experience that today. You got to experience a piece of that puzzle.
Yes, I mean, living through the Nick Jacobs fantasy camp today.
The fantasy camp.
I gotta say, because hey, just to let everybody know how the sausage is made. I mean, Nick was at work at 8 o'clock this morning. We were on. I roll the talent, which I get to
Yeah,
loosely
you are.
call
You are the talent.
which
Yeah,
I get
you
to
got a
loosely call
microphone and
myself
IFB.
today. I'm the talent. Got to roll in at a leisurely like 9:45. So be on the air at 10, and and then I got to roll out of there like. I guess I was home about 9:15. Nick gets home to the point where we're still recording this at 1:33 a.m. So that's
It
the kind of day that
happens.
Nick Jacobs has.
It's not a problem. I can't complain. It would have been worse if they'd lost.
You're
But
living your dream, Nick. It might not be everybody's dream, but it's your dream.
I can't complain. And I do want to ask you this though, from having because this was the first time you had to have me in your IFB like throughout an entire like analysis style of show. So yeah, you can share that one with the viewers. How quickly I'm like, all right, wrap, just how quickly and speedily I am with that type of stuff.
You know what I'm really proud of is that, from my experiences on Sunday Sound Off, I am now to the point where when you tell me to wrap up or I only have 10 seconds left, that I don't freeze as much anymore.
No,
Where I get this and I'm like, oh, I only have 10 seconds left. What do I do? And I just stop talking for a second. I'm better at that. Although we now know I need to stop swaying.
hey, you know what? We all learn stuff. Well, because when you're on sound off, you're sitting in a chair, so like there's no chance because you're gonna fall off the chair that we have at the building.
See, I was trying to emulate TV's Mick Schaefer. He sways, but he knows how to sway. I don't. So I
Well,
was swaying in the wrong direction, in the wrong way.
I'm just saying for our directors that have the robotic cameras, I felt bad for them because it's like they're having to move it's like a joystick they're having to move with with the sway to keep it centered up.
Yes, I definitely, because if you told me if I didn't stop swaying, I wasn't going to be invited to your birthday party.
Well, I mean, okay, now you're letting people know too much of how the sausage is made. So. But you quit swaying, so I accomplished the goal.
Woohoo, I'm proud of myself. Well, Nick has volunteered to possibly make sure that we're back here next week for a just 49ers Chiefs preview. So hopefully we'll be back in your stream. You're not going to have to wait for us for 2 weeks. You'll only have 1 week to wait for us to be
Yeah.
back in. And we'll be back here in 41 as the mic to look at Super Bowl 58 and the Chiefs and the 49ers. I will have our weekly Chiefs Digest Q&A on Tuesday night that Nick oftentimes shows up for, even though it's his day off.
I'll show up. Don't worry.
You are the best, Nick. You are the greatest. So bring your questions on Tuesday, and we will answer them. And we'll see what else. The Chiefs will have a couple of media availabilities this week, so you will get some Chiefs news out of Arrowhead Drive this week. We have Andy Reid on Monday, a little bit, for those of you listening Monday morning, just in a couple hours. So
Yeah.
we'll be back at it with what the Chiefs' news is going on this week. But any parting thoughts, Nick? Anything just had to get off your chest?
No, I already did with the Bill Belichick thing. I can sleep soundly tonight. That was
We hammered on Belichick and Justin Tucker. We've touched it all.
yeah. Now that those are done, I can sleep peacefully tonight.
I just have to give one more quick salute, though, to Travis Kelce and to L'Jarius Sneed for successfully getting personal foul penalties called on their opponent without responding and retaliating and getting offsetting penalties or even just drawing the flag themselves. Even to the point where Travis Kelce was so proud of himself that he couldn't stop laughing.
All right, you've inspired my final thought. Now that I thought about it, yeah, and I think with Snead had the punch out on Flowers, if I remember correctly, and I say that because it's 1:37 in the morning, and I don't remember what day it is right now. But you and I remember at camp every day. It's so fitting that the guys kept trying to punch the ball out of Travis Kelce and all the offensive players, and that's part of them doing that in training camp every day. And Kelce kind of getting heated with some of the guys that were doing it. That literally is what is helping send them to the Super Bowl by doing that to Zay Flowers because of what they did back in July and August, and Kelce getting a little frustrated with it at times, and like him having to experience some of that, like that's what's getting him back to that Super Bowl. I find that kind of fitting in a fun way.
Because maybe Travis Kelce doesn't go 11 catches on 11 targets with no fumbles and Kyle Hamilton slashing away at him and hacking away at him without all those guys pestering him back in July.
There's that too, Matt.
It's the big circle of life, Nick.
It's a circle. It's continuous. It's a circle.
Well, we have finally broken Nick. He has been awake for, I think, well, not just awake, but like working for 16 hours. So we need to reboot him.
That's true. I'm not gonna lie on that one.
Thanks everybody once again for joining us. Hit the likes, the subscribe, the bell, whatever it is that you got in front of you. Leave a review, 5 stars, anything like that to help people guide the podcast. We truly appreciate it. And of course, like I said, please block anyone who on your social media accounts is saying that Andy Reid's going to retire and Bill Belichick will come to Kansas City. So
I bid you adieu.